In this example, I want to look at how Solid Edge handles large assemblies. So we've got this factory that's laid out. We've got forklifts and whatever. First thing I want to do is, if as soon as I try and select anything, this is always getting in the way. So if I right mouse click on it, I can go to Occurrence Properties, and one of the options in here is, these are all grounded parts, but we can actually make that part non-selectable. So now when I hover over it, it's not going to get in the way. Over here you'll see that I can still select it and change things back if I need to. Another thing that we can do is forklifts, pallets, whatever, we want to maybe show and hide those. In this case, I know that all these robot arms have property information associated with them, and I can go into my select tools and I can create a new query and utilize that information. So I'll just call that robot arms, and that information is held in the title. We've got options here, so I'll have contains and robot, add that to my list, and then click OK. So we could have multiple queries that help sort of define that. So now we've got a couple of queries in here. I can double click on that and it's going to select me all of the robots in one go. I've got a couple of ways that I could work with this. One will be to right mouse click in sort of free area, and I'm going to just do a show only, and that hides everything else. And in Solid Edge we have configurations which allows us to select multiple items, and I'm going to create a new one called robot arms and go OK. So if I want to go back, I can go back to my main assembly and pick that. Alternatively, I can just pick, say, maybe the pallets and robot arms, and that gives me a very quick way of getting in to defining what we want to see, and obviously restricting what we are going to work with. These properties that we're using to access, if we look at, say, one of these other parts, this person's made up of several components. We can see that we've got the whole model as an assembly. I can pick that, and then if I go scroll to, that takes me straight to that sub-assembly in the Pathfinder. I can individually go through and look at the file properties on those. So when we look through, we've got no information on that whatsoever. Rather than doing it file by file, I can actually go down into my info and go into Property Manager, and in a moment that will come up with the properties that are associated with each of the parts and assemblies. So if we look here, this is sort of split into no levels. I can change that into a bomb view, and for this option I can do things a little bit easier. I can fill in, say, human in here, and Control C and Control V, and update all of those all in one go. So now I could do a similar selection to get those individual people hidden out of the system quite quickly. So let's take the rest of it out. We'll just look at the conveyors. That gives me a sort of clearer picture of what we're looking at. We can hover over this and go into that, or select that assembly and choose the edit, so that we're only looking at that particular part. We can still see the rest of the assembly out there if we want to. So this isn't a sort of complete assembly, but it does have multiple parts in here. If I look at the top view, I can come over here and choose face priority. So we're still working within this sub-assembly. So what I can do is I can fence select all of this and say that I need it to be say 200 mils wider. So as I sort of just drag that out, you can see that we can change that configuration or that value. So if I type in 200, you'll see that it gets that much wider. Just so that we can prove that, if I go Control Z, you'll see it will snap back into position. So the reason it jumped out one way is because it's constrained on the other side. So that just shows you how you can sort of rebuild a conveyor assembly from the assembly, which makes things a hell of a lot faster.